Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to what is not Son of Comicsgate Live. Hopefully, you all saw the tweet. Switching some things around on my channel a little bit, and Son of Comicsgate Live is not going anywhere. It's just I'm going to eventually settle that into like an every other week kind of thing. But this is an idea that that Ishii had, and he's actually expressed it a couple times on Son of Comicsgate Live to do a writing stream because we tend to talk about that a bit on that episode anyway. And then I'm going to try to just keep Son of Comicsgate Live more focused on showcasing the campaigns and a lot of new creators and stuff like that. So we figure we try it out on my channel first, since this is where people are used to coming for this sort of combination. And I do want to welcome Dr. Wright to the channel. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everybody.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ishii. This is his baby, so I'm going to sit back, enjoy my Diet Dr. Pepper, and speak when called on.
Diet Dr. Pepper. Sure.
Well, I would say, just to get started, for this topic this week, I would like to discuss the idea of writing original superheroes, which has always been kind of contentious and a bit of a minefield in the past. So for so long, the idea of writing an original superhero that existed outside of the DCU or MCU was pretty much pointless. The big two had cornered the market. They owned all the great classic characters. So writing outside of their established mythologies was essentially a fool's errand. But as we all know, these days, the big two have fallen down on the job. They are no longer publishing stories about the classic characters we know and love. They may have the names and the visages of those characters, but they are not those characters, and we certainly don't love them. So this has left the door open for indie creators to fill that gap. But the question remains, how do we create original superhero myths that capture the spirit of the classics without them being a blatant copy?
True.
And I guess the easiest start, and this is one of the reasons I definitely wanted to do this with you involved, Prof, is what are the classic core archetypes? Are they the DC Trinity, Marvel's Spider-Man, and the Avengers?
That's a good question. And archetypes are tricky. We're talking about them in the context of already talking about the hero, which is itself as an archetype. So you might say we're doing like sub-archetypes or whatever. Every mythologist specialist or whatever, or comparative mythologist or whatever, is going to have a different list or whatever. So I think we can all kind of agree, though. You look at some of the most popular types of characters. I think that the Paragon, the aspirational one, he is like a Superman or a Captain America. They're few and far between, but they are necessary. The detectives are popular. So if you're looking at the Trinity there, the heroine, Wonder Woman, but the tricksters are hugely popular too. So whether you talk about Spider-Man or one of the Flashes that fits that mold, the Frontiersman, let's just keep going with the Justice League, since, you kind of got me going with that, a Green Lantern, able to straddle boundaries and use the gifts from either side in the other, yeah, I mean, there are some others to do as well, but that's a good start. I mean, those are the ones that we tend to see, a lot of different versions of. So if you hear people talking about their superhero comic, they'll say, well, this is kind of like a Spider-Man type character, except, and then they'll go into what makes it original, or this is kind of like my Batman, except,
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't do that list without Batman, because that seems to have been kind of the default for so long. Like Batman, but
yeah, and he's an interesting amalgamation of a couple of different archetypes. I mean, he's the detective, he's also a vigilante. Depending on how people write him, he can maybe cover in a couple others as well.
So how would you say they differ from the classic mythological archetypes?
Not at all, actually. Not at all. I mean, Theseus was a detective. Oedipus himself was a detective. Theseus is even known, that's really fun once you delve into it. Theseus was a cousin of Heracles. Heracles, son of God, come to Earth, being a hero on Earth, with the powers that he got from his godship, so that's a Superman type to a certain degree, coming to Earth, from a father above or whatever.
And then he's a chunkhead.
Yeah, and then but Theseus, his cousin, who, according to tradition, was a little shorter and had to develop a certain way of fighting, a way of throwing enemies and using his weight as counterweight and stuff like that, in order to compensate for him himself not having any demigod powers to the extent of someone like Heracles. So you see a lot of the resonances there. Where it differs is the setting. and the the cultural trappings, and we need a set in a city, not a Olympian kind of setting or whatever. We need a Gothic city for Batman. We got the wonderful backstory, losing the parents, so it's cultural little tells, I think, change, if that answers your question, or if that's what you're going for.
Well, I think at this point, really, I wasn't going for anything. I believe we're going to probably all come at this from different angles, and the field's open. But it has been the big question for a very, very long time, because there have been lots of attempts to create original superhero and superhero universes outside the big two, but they didn't have the cultural weight behind them. And we're in this really weird phase now of comics in our own culture in which our old mythologies are not being respected, and we need new myths.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. We're going to see that void happen even more and more now that so many of the characters that fulfilled these roles for us, these archetypes for us, and they showed us how to strive for something better. When so many of them are being turned in upon themselves as navel gazers and more of a nihilistic kind of trend, you're going to see that hole in society. And yeah, absolutely. And society does look to that. I would love to hear Dr. Wright's perspective on this after I say this, but I tell the story often. When they were doing the show Smallville, they were just sort of putting it together and announcing that this was coming. A lot of the critics out there were saying, this is so stupid and so cheesy. We don't need another Superman story. We don't need him when he was a little boy. This is so dumb. Then 9/11 happened. And over freaking night, the critics changed their tune. They were saying, we desperately need the Superman show. We need this right now. I mean, people know when they need certain things in cultures, and they have an innate compass that points to certain characters that they've come to rely on for it.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely agree with that. I think that, when it comes to like Smallville or any kind of show, especially Smallville was a kind of like a minor deconstruction. I mean, you wanted to take, the character Superman, break it down, and I think they tried to make it more relatable. Obviously in a not in like the 40s and 50s, but in like the 90s or 2000s.
2000s, yeah.
And and I thought they did like a pretty good job of that. But I do think that, there is like, I don't know, like we as a society always seem to be like, we don't need hope. We don't need hope. And then something bad happens and it's like, we need hope. We need hope. It's like nobody calls out for God until they need him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And it is just that kind of thing. And I mean, obviously, like, culturally, especially lately, as we were talking about, like, people, I don't know, like everything's topical. It's not really about the journey. It's not about something long lasting. It's about, what is gonna, I don't know, it's almost like a South Park episode. What hero can we make or change that will affect, the audience like this very second?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would have to say good hero myths transcend time.
Yes. Exactly. Because I think they're built on, universal properties. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When you're talking about good heroes, you're not talking about, what happened, yesterday or what political decision, some president made or whatever. Right. I mean, what you're really, if you're, doing good heroes, it's about the journey. Mm-hmm. It's about dealing with, they want something. I mean, what's the most simple thing? It's a hero. They want something. Someone is, pressing against that and trying to stop them. Okay, go. And it's that simple because we all want something. We all want, it's like even a brick wants to be more. It wants to be a building. It wants to be a mausoleum. It wants to be great. Well, every one of us wants to be something. And so wanting something and have somebody, having like the world itself feel like it's crushing down on us and saying, no, you can't have it. But then standing within that negative space, staring up at it and saying, yes, I can, is always going to be, more topical or interesting, and is always going to be more timeless than, anything they're coming out with today. Mm-hmm. Or, when you have these kind of stories, like we were saying, that, I don't know, because I don't know, the heroes that we make are the myth of tomorrow.
Yeah. Stop me, Ishii, if you wanted to say more or whatever, or steer in a different direction. But you guys both brought up two good truths that the stories are timeless, and yet they also do respond to different moments in culture, and that's because so much of culture in our lives and a society's life is cyclical. So, for example, when Zack Snyder put out Man of Steel, that was a lot of superhero historians will tell you that's a weird time to put out a Superman movie, and we know that the reasons because that was because of copyrights expiring and all this kind of stuff. But really, that was probably more of a time for a Batman movie. And whenever the general consensus is unhappy with the status quo, that tends to be a time for a Batman movie. Now, why? Because Batman's a detective, and a detective restores those boundaries. So whenever there's sort of a cultural upheaval, or people, somebody's upset the apple cart, so to speak, whether that's for good or for bad, it could be a heavy immigration or a government change or something like that. The detective stories come in and they tell you, hey, even though things are changing right now, there's still justice. We're still going to find the bad guy and call that bad, and we're going to, protect the good guy and call, or the innocent, and call that something as well. So that does come, the need for that comes back up in society now and then. And when we finally did get Batman, we got a deep, introspective kind of midlife crisis Batman that wasn't fulfilling that need.
So what time, what period in which a culture's history is there a need for a cynical dark hero that is a vile asshole who shoots villains who surrender? I mean, when do we need that? I mean, when do we need the quintessential Zack Schneider?
Well, hey, we've always got to brand, our bat symbol into somebody's neck.
Exactly.
People,
yeah.
We need to diminish people into cattle.
That was just so real, man. It's real.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, Owen Lister brought up a great point here, and I think this is especially one you've covered a few times now, Prof, is I think My Hero Academia will be our new Marvel DC replacement.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
I mean, it's really good.
That series has been able to take all the tropes that we loved about old classic superheroes, made it fresh, new and interesting, and it's not a copy.
Because it's not a deconstruction. It's not trying to rip it apart. It's actually taking those parts that we love and fitting it for our current day.
It is a celebration, isn't it?
Yeah, it is it's very much so a celebration. It's also a celebration of the idea that the individual can make a difference.
Absolutely.
I think it's even more than that. I mean, it is like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen all the episodes. I've seen quite a few, and I mean, everything that I've seen I've loved. But I mean, I have when I started getting into it, I'm like, this is so interesting. These characters are just so crazy. What is this? And it's like every individual character, well, just about. I mean, maybe there's a few that don't, but many of the characters have their own arc, and they're each cared for, and they each mean something, and they're not just backdrop. They're not just cardboard characters. Each one of them is alive. Yeah. And you can imagine them, within this scenario doing whatever, right? I mean, I always say, like, I write character driven. And so when I create a character, I create the character, so well in background and everything that when I put them in a scenario, they practically write themselves, because I know who they are and what they are. And so in that scenario, I know what they're going to do. And a lot of ways, My Hero Academia and a lot of, manga, really, well-written manga in general is kind of that same way in that, I mean, everything has a purpose. You think, oh, that's just a symbol. Like, no, it's more than that. Or even like the animation. I remember, what is it? When he gives I'm sorry, I don't remember. Is All Might? He does the last smash. United States of Smash. And if you like watch it, and you watch that, right? And you watch, take a whole country, but you watch the animation and even the manga is the same. And it looked at, I didn't get it at first. I had to listen to an explanation of it. I'm like, man, that is so cool. It's like, there's this little flame. It's the only flame left. It used to be a raging fire, but now it's just this little dart of a flame. Right. And he's huddling over it and trying to hold it as much as he can. And then at that last moment, he's like, this is all I have. This is everything I have to give. And in that moment, not only does he use that flame, he becomes the flame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to, sorry.
No, I was just, basically was it. I'm just saying that, like, because they take that much care in everything that they do, it's like, that is everything. I mean, that makes you, who cannot see that scene and just jump up and say, yes.
Exactly.
America, fuck yeah.
Exactly. America. Fuck yeah.
Well, I would say one thing that separates My Hero Academia from what we're getting from the big two, and there are a few other Japanese properties that have delved into American style heroes and done it as well, but My Hero Academia does it best, is it embraces something that the big two have come to loathe and hate, and that is individual exceptionalism and virtue.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the villains in My Hero Academia, they have a lot more in common with the so-called heroes we're getting from the big two right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Cynics, they're communalists, they don't believe in individuals.
Yeah. And what I love about My Hero Academia so much is that it's not just the story of Midoriya. It's not just Deku's story. It's the story of all of these different characters, and it allows it builds up each one of them in their own three-dimensional version of their archetype. So, for example, you're talking about the villains, Ishii, and that the character Todoroki really kind of impresses me because he's somebody that you could very well ease. Now I'm only doing the anime. I haven't read that far in the manga yet. I'm still getting there. So if I'm talking about something that actually does happen later or whatever, this is just me at the anime point. But he's someone you could easily see tripping over and falling into villains with his backstory with his father and with the internal trauma with his mother and all that kind of stuff. But he's so impressed and inspired by Midoriya. And that's what an aspirational character like a Midoriya or like an All Might should do. It should, and it doesn't have to be cheesy. People are like, oh, but it's so what? I need Spider-Man fawning over Captain America all the time. No, you can have Todoroki, who's older, or looks a little older anyway. More badass and more powerful, at least to begin with, as far as he knows, than this little punk Midoriya coming in and trying to be all wide-eyed and stuff. And yet he's impressed and he's really touched and driven. And Midoriya reaches out to him in that competition, for example, and that's just so the whole universe of My Hero Academia. You're right. I mean, I never thought of it, Ishii, like in terms of replacing a whole superhero universe. But you've got all the players, you've got all the archetypes. I'd so much rather spend some time in MHA than Marvel, for God's sake. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you read My Hero Academia or you watch it, you don't feel like shit afterwards.
No, you feel awesome. Like
you feel inspired. You feel
exactly.
good. You enjoyed it. You like seeing these people overcome, these horrible odds and taking losses. And I mean, there's real sacrifice, but also for good reason. There's so many things in there that are what draw us to these kinds of stories.
I'd also say that you actually watch every character grow and develop as the story progresses. I mean, right now, Marvel and DC are stagnant. In fact, they're regressing.
Yeah, and their
Bobby,
characters are all getting younger and younger and more naive and
selfish and childlike.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an episode of Talking Shop coming up where we go through the new Avengers, the woke Avengers, and the activity is, can these characters be saved? And we go down the list of each one. And
that physically
how many of them were like, essentially, this is a villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, like Riri.
Well, yeah, Riri, America Chavez,
Kamala.
Well, I mean, isn't that what happens?
Really a villain. She's just a life-wrecking idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what happens when you embrace 1920 French philosophy?
Yeah.
Tear apart any kind of surrealism, go postmodern, remove the universal absolutes of heroism, morality, faith, hope, religion. I mean, that's what you get.
Who would have imagined an ideology thought up by a bunch of amoral pedophiles would result in such a thing? Gosh, how could that happen?
I don't, and everybody loves it. All the artists, they're like, oh, postmodernism, it's the greatest thing.
Oh, yes. I mean, it is so forward thinking, no accountability, and I can just do what I want, and we can all agree it's okay.
Yeah, moral relativism.
Yeah.
Nothing
Nothing matters, so I'll go rape a child.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's funny about all those is they always end up, it's deconstruction, right? You have to tear it down, and then you want to build it back up. But every time they build it up, you ever notice it's always in their own self-image?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
all they know and all they care about.
Oh, well, wait. What did Tom King say about writing characters? You can't do anything new with Batman. All you can bring is yourself.
Well, he also said that he wrecks every character he touches.
with a huge grin.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Tom King is the worst writer of irony there's ever been in the history of writing.
He writes irony?
He tries. It's just the cheesiest thing ever. It's like, okay, this is how. Like, listen. All right, he wrote, Mr. Miracle, right? The greatest escape artist. So how does he write him? Oh, well, the only thing he can't escape is his own mind.
Womp womp.
Flash, he's the fastest guy ever. What's the one thing he can't escape? Himself after he commits a murder.
Yeah.
I think Tom King's projecting.
Well, he absolutely hates himself, and I really wish he would just seek therapy and stop writing it in his comic books.
I don't know. I think maybe if he committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
What, slit his wrist with a floppy?
I'm sorry. I know that's pretty low, but at the same
Ouch.
time, him talking about sharing Batman with his daughter, and he's got Catwoman fucking robots.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, you messed up. Get away from your kid. If she's real, get the hell away from her.
They also act like, and the people who defend it act like, but it's so original, and it's not. It's the same damn mold. So like people will say that about Snyder's Superman. This is the most original story we've ever had. They're finally doing something different. No, they're taking the one character that was different, and they're doing the same thing they've done with every other character now with them. Or the Joker movie coming up, for example. Our hero, our villains have to be they have to have traumatic backstories, and we have to feel empathy for them. No, you don't. I'm doing a video about that tomorrow. It's just ridiculous.
I don't care if our villains had traumatic backstories. They're still killing children. Exactly. That's not going to make me feel sorry for them.
I know the backstory of Jeffrey Dahmer, and, he still deserved to die.
Yeah.
Well, if we only could have some better laughing gas control laws in the country, then the Joker wouldn't be able to kill so many people.
Where's the chainsaw attachment for the laughing gas?
Don't bring up Joker. I saw that trailer yesterday. I was like, ugh.
I refuse to put that in my head.
That would be a hilarious parody that you could have Gotham and you've got these people saying that we need freeze gun laws.
Yeah.
That'll stop it.
Freeze gun laws.
And no umbrella guns.
No, you do. Your freeze gun is problematic.
Throw their umbrellas away.
And
I'm literally shaking right now.
Exactly. Only says just outlaw murder. Problem solved.
There you go. Yeah, gosh, why
why don't we think of that?
So I've got a fun story actually about Hollywood and the fact that every villain needs to be a relatable person with a horrible backstory or an abusive backstory. Mm-hmm. When I was talking to Hollywood regarding my story Titanium Rain, and when they were going to option it, I had a dictator in the story that had forced a civil war in China. And the guy had cooked up the villain in my story had cooked up this whole story that he was the reincarnation of China's first emperor and that he was going to take them back to the dynasties and a new 1,000 years of prosperity type thing. Mm-hmm. And he's a very Mussolini-esque, chest-thumping dictator. And he's strictly doing it for power and, the kinds of reasons that a villain or a dictator would. And they're on the phone and there's like, well, can't we make him a bit more like, Darth Vader, where he has like this childhood and this, remember when Anakin, remember they wanted it to be.
Yeah, they wanted him to have a tragic past.
And why is he doing all this? Is he doing it for money? What's his motive? And it's he's an asshole, a power hungry asshole. That's why he's doing it. I mean, yeah, but we need some sort of explanation. I mean, maybe he was abused. And it's like, Hitler didn't do it for the money.
These are also people who
he did it for the lulz, baby.
These are also the people who didn't understand geography. And
that is true.
They wanted North Korea to be getting into this war for water rights
in the Himalayas.
Yeah, in the Himalayas.
And I asked them if they had seen a map. But yeah, they were thoroughly baffled at the idea of a villain who wasn't sympathetic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and there's room for the it's not that that's a horrible character, a sympathetic villain. I mean, there's room for that, and there's room for some villains but that's all we have now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and one of the worst cliches, and so many big name writers will spout this nonsense, and it really drives me nuts, is when I'm writing a villain, I always think, well, this person thinks he's the hero because everyone thinks they're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that really needs to stop. I mean, that is such a first world, limited life of privilege and comfort point of view to think that everyone is operating on the notion that what they're doing is right.
Yeah.
And I've probably used this example before, but this is absolutely true. That right now in Nigeria, there are terrorists going around to villages and gathering up all the boys and tying them up and essentially saying that either you rape your mothers and eat them as part of the initiation to become one of our child soldiers, or we'll set you on fire. And they have burned thousands of boys alive. And you've got to ask yourself, how can anyone even remotely say, oh, yeah, I'm doing this for the right reasons?
Mm-hmm. And even taking it in a more like everyday example, just think about your own life. And whenever you think about something you've done that, you're not proud of that. You really wish, or regret you have or whatever. And then really think about yourself when you were doing it. You weren't like thinking, aha, I'm the hero of my story here, because you do have some of those moments, but again, you can't, that's not the be all and end all of villainy.
Well, there are definitely people out there who love the idea of breaking rules and taboos strictly for the sake of doing it.
Exactly.
There are sadists who really just enjoy hurting people. And I think that right now in the modern postmodernist mindset of the left that has so taken the culture right now, it's very hard to admit to ourselves, no, evil exists. It's real. And there are bad people out there who do bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fully aware of what they're doing. And again, that is a very privileged point of view to have. You need to live in an extreme comfort and safety to even begin to get that notion. Jacob R. said something really good. Jacob R. writes, the reason for this is people can't confront the darker parts of their own psyche. No one wants to admit that given half the chance, he would be Genghis Khan. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's, it's weird, but that's one reason why, or that's one purpose of an anti-hero story. But I think people take the purpose and they overdose on it like a drug, and so it's not healthy anymore. But people are drawn to those characters like Punisher or even Deadpool and stuff like that because it's so fun to see a character go so over the top and beyond justice and just kind of vent out their emotions or revenge or whatever. Because these are people with an undeveloped shadow. These are people with an undeveloped darker side. They've just tried to deny their darker side or tried to justify it or tried to give it a empathy or something like that, rather than say, no, that's evil and it's in me and I got to figure out how to make it work for me so I don't work for it.
You mean like Antifa?
And with that said, yeah, Deadpool is fun, but of course Deadpool is a comedic character. You can laugh at the fun that he's having by maiming people left and right. All right, that is half the fun is venting your frustrations of the world through this fun-loving character. Yeah. But then with what you just said, one of my favorite characters is Hunter Rose Grundle, but Hunter Rose is a villain. He is most definitely a villain. He is the flip side of Batman, where Batman decides he's going to fight crime and stop villainy because he doesn't want to see another child lose their parents. Where Hunter Rose said, you know what? Screw stopping crime. I'm going to run it and I'm going to make money while I'm doing it. And I'm going to reshape the crime in this city in my image. And anybody who thinks that Hunter is the hero, I don't want to know that person because it is very clear he's not.
Okay, well, redirecting this back to the concept of writing original superheroes, this brings up the most important thing. Often, to properly create a hero, you need to know who his nemesis is, who's the villain of the story. Often that is even more important than the hero himself, because that's the force he has to overcome.
And the bar that needs to be reached.
Which is another reason why Marvel characters have become so dull in the comics, is their villains are all so completely hapless.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I mean, I think the idea that a villain is the hero of their own story is a fundamental misunderstanding of the two opposing forces within that narrative. I mean, obviously, like we said before, you got a hero, you have a want, that you have something opposing that want. Normally, that is the nemesis doing whatever they can to stop them for whatever reason, right? And why are they doing that? Because they have their own want, and the hero is usually opposing what they want to do, getting in their way in some form or fashion. And so it's like, oh, well, see, then they're the hero. They're just misunderstood. No, that's not how it works. The fact that, if his want is to kill 1 million people, put 1 billion babies on spikes, that's not a good thing.
Actually, I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much of this, the villain has to be sympathetic, is because really, I think the vast majority of people running Hollywood are vile, despicable people themselves. No, I'm not joking here.
No, I think that's a good train of thought.
I mean, my own dealings with Hollywood, I found nothing but a bunch of, borderline questionable people.
Well, it's
Well, I mean,
basically.
No, I'm thinking about that party at the Arkea party.
Oh God.
That's specifically what I'm thinking about, was the Arkea party.
Yeah.
Not the dealings with the movie house.
No.
Not Alexandra. No, I'm talking about when we were at that party and they had all the studio people show up to talk to the talent. It was just, how is this not Caligula's court?
Was Tom Gunn there in a priest costume?
It was almost
hedonism.
No, you think you're joking. It was almost that bad.
I am shocked that there weren't, weird, midgets in gimp outfits. And,
there was Wee Man running around naked.
There was Wee Man running around naked. That is true. So,
okay,
Bam Margera.
Yeah, and Bam Margera running into the women's bathroom to have sex with people.
Yeah.
But no, there were producers that were just, blasted on cocaine with hookers on them, and you make my shit look good, and that's why I'm rich. I love artists because you make my shit smell good, and I'm rich.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just.
Like, I mean, they don't know how to write heroes, and they shouldn't be.
They really don't.
But getting back to the topic, I think it is true that they're making the villains seem sympathetic because
they relate to them.
They relate to them, and they don't want people to think that they're evil. It's no, I'm not evil. I'm misunderstood, or I've been traumatized, and that's why I'm the way I am, and that's why you have to make allowances for me.
I kind of wonder if Kevin Spacey and Weinstein kind of related to the villain.
Oh, I'm sure they did. They were like, "This guy's not so bad. What are you talking about? He's only killed 3 people."
He did a great job in 7.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What's in the box?
Okay, question. Aged boomer. You're good because you have you've read the history of Hollywood quite a bit. You answer this, Kat.
What's the
super chat? Thanks for that $5, by the way.
Thank you, aged boomer. What changed in Hollywood? We used to get directors like Richard Donner. He understood heroes.
Amen.
They're all making independent films now. They all got ran out of town. Yeah. Really, that's it.
At some point, the lawyers and the money people took over, and a certain handful of celebrities.
Well, and the studios decided that they weren't going. The studios stopped making movies that the people wanted to see, and they started making movies that they wanted to see instead. I mean, look at what's happened. Look what's happened to Star Wars. Yes, I'm going there.
Oh, they're not. Rey might turn dark. What do you mean might? You mean admit she's dark?
Yeah. And I like the way you said that. They stopped making movies people wanted to see, and now would even go so far as to say they're making movies now that they want people to want to see.
Yeah, that too.
I
And
don't
they
even think
want
it's
people
that.
to like what they like.
They're making movies they're making movies and shows and everything. It's like Clownfish TV's talked about this a couple of times, like the new She-Ra, a lot of the animated shows, that they're nothing like, the properties they were based on, from the past. And what are they really doing? They're making, movies not for kids. These aren't for kids. They're making movies for their friends.
Yeah, they are. And they also have no interest in actually working with the properties that they have been given, but they know people want to see those properties. So they figure, well, if I do my thing and I slap this title on that people like, then people will like my shit. And then they're shocked when they don't.
No, when you don't, you're a Nazi.
Yes. And exactly. You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know. They have no reverence. I mean, they've even said, like, going back to the She-Ra thing, I remember they said that, like, Noel Stevenson created it. Like, that's on the Netflix. Oh, created and produced by, Noel Stevenson. It's like, what? Like, it was out before she was born.
Yeah.
And you can see that Noel Stevens is a good example because talking about the stories they want to see and putting in the sympathetic villains, maybe doing to work on their own kind of conscience or whatever. You see so many storytellers just literally shamelessly placing themselves into their own stories now. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Their characters have to look like them. They have to talk like them. They have to. That's writers know if your character's that close to you, then you need to readjust that character because you're not going to write a decent story. You're going to just, kind of this mental masturbation session with your character, where
I
yeah,
think they want everybody to masturbate about them with them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It is pretty ridiculous. Like, so many people do the self-insert, but, it's kind of interesting. Vampirella issue 1 had a self-insert done in a different way, which I thought was really interesting. Priest put him. Say again?
Oh, sorry, something else. Keep going.
Okay. Priest, Christopher Priest put himself in the book, and he did it to change the focal point of the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
Because, when he put himself in the book, not for vanity, but to say, like, basically to say, hey, everything that I'm doing from this point on is either false or, in a different way. And then when you begin to look at that, you realize that the entire book, instead of, feeding the narrative, is actually being a parody of it.
You're talking about the therapist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, that's how you do a self-insert if you're going to do it. But yeah, I mean, these people just get I don't know. I always tell people, like, when you're writing something, take yourself out of it. In anything, the best thing you can do is take yourself out of it, because the more you put yourself into it, like you said, you're just going to get into, like, self-masturbation, and you're not really doing anything. You're just gratifying yourself and your friends, and that's it. Hey, Mom, didn't I do a good job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so who's mom in this scenario?
Not me. So
Okay.
what does it take to make a superhero in today? I mean, like, superheroes, like we've talked about it before, they are the iconic myth, right? They're the mythological creature or character of today.
I would even go further and say that they're the distinctly American myth.
Okay.
Yeah, superheroes, yeah.
All right. So the distinctly American, I like it.
Is comics was distinctly an American art form.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's outright criminal that something that is so unique to our culture and inherent to who we are is being deconstructed and burnt down for the purposes of propaganda and cheap thrills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, most comic books, especially the mainstream, are just like liberal seminal tracks.
Mm-hmm. There it is. It's I like that you pointed out that they're uniquely American, because if you look at the hero's journey across the world, you do have the formula and the stages and all of that stuff, but there are slight cultural differences to the hero depending on what you're talking about. So not every culture will have a hero is willing to is willing to say, yeah, I did that. I did that. is willing to call themselves a hero. You'll have them a little bit more self-deprecating, or a little, not quite as willing to draw such a strong line between the right and the wrong or whatever. But that's uniquely American, and especially we kind of go through this in cycles too. But we're living in such a time now where it's just, oh, American culture isn't cool. No, you want to be thought of as something other than American. It's like, no, we got an awesome heritage here, and it has nothing to do with which regime is or which administration's in power. It's just there's American culture, there's the American way that underlies and is foundational and is not subject to a political party or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
All right. So when does archetype cross over into blatant copy? What prevents Daredevil from being a copy of Batman or Namor being a copy of Aquaman? What is it that separates them?
I think a good example of this is look at Green Arrow, because when Green Arrow was written and created, he was a blatant copy of Batman. Let's just copy that formula, get another character out there. But then as he developed, and his characters often do, as you guys know, writing your own characters, they kind of tend to take on a personality of their own, and then pretty soon he's got this sort of this really cool, like he's like the bleeding heart kind of guy. He's making up for his Playboy past. He's not joking, he's not putting on the show of the Playboy, and he takes on this Robin Hood. Like, so many little things they just seemingly threw in at random to create him work toward developing him into his own character and his own, like he's differs from Batman in so many different ways now that other than the foundational outline of the character, I don't think you could call him a ripoff anymore, if that makes sense.
Is that why there are so many stories where Batman's ripping on him?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
No,
the two of them.
Is that why that keeps coming up in different stories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, they're supposed to be like political opposites.
Yeah.
Like Batman is conservative and Oliver's very liberal, and so they're always at odds of how to deal with. It's kind of funny because like they, in the end, they agree on what to do, but not why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the crux of their sort of buddy cop when the few times they're together sort of deal. I think, I don't know. I mean, like you said, you create the character and then they kind of make a life of their own. But I mean, as far as Daredevil and Batman, I think it's the impetus of creation in that regard. I mean, you have this sacrifice of Batman, his sacrifice his parents, and his thing is, I don't want anyone else to go through this. Right. But then, with Daredevil, he's like, his dad gets killed and he's, but even before that, he began the abilities, and then he just wants to be like the ultimate defender. It seems like, is more to me. Like he wants to protect his, what is it? Hell's Kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to stop this crime from going outside of it if he can. But his I think his thing is like, he's trying to solve, what he can't see.
That's a good example. I don't know exactly how Stan Lee created the character of Daredevil. Okay, so I'm just going to but use it as an example. This is a possible way he could have created. But you take a character and say, okay, I want a character like a Spider-Man type or a Batman type or whatever. All right, and you start with, what's your difference? Okay, it's got to be more than, well, mine wears a red costume. It's got to be more than that. So let's say Stan Lee was sitting there and creating Daredevil. He said, I want a vigilante character like a Batman type or whatever, but my character's going to be blind. Well, that's fascinating. That's a deep, deep difference that's going to reverberate throughout the character. But it's not only in the practical matters of how he fights crime and what his powers are, but also in thematic matters. So, I just imagine that he started out as having the character blind. And then there was the concept of being blind. Justice is blind. Ooh, why don't we just make him a lawyer too? And by the end of it, you've got this fascinating multi-layered character who is a lawyer by day, like prosecuting by the book, and then a vigilante at night, going out and not doing anything by the book. So he's got this dichotomous nature anyway, and then he's blind, and then so he's like the epitome of justice embodied or whatever. And it's if you let those differences permeate your character and do their own kind of work, you can end up with a legit different version of the archetype that isn't just a copy.
Well, I would say that also. I'm not sure. Would it be Frank Miller or Ditko who brought was it the Irish working class and Catholic guilt aspect to the character?
Oh yeah, that's another aspect. Yeah.
I really feel that those things are really what pull him away from Bruce Wayne. Is that
Yeah.
he's a working class Irish New Yorker, and in that sense, there is so much of a gulf between the two in that alone.
Yeah.
And that while Batman is also Catholic, you don't really see the massive struggling of guilt that that Daredevil seems to have in the books written by Miller. And
Well, also on top of that, Bruce Wayne, billionaire, he invests his money in all these different things to help people. On top of that, he's got an entire Batcave filled with gadgets, and
a butler
where Daredevil, Matt Murdock, working class, blinded as a child, single parent, then becomes an orphan. He's had to fight every step of the way his entire life. So he's self-made every step, going to law school blind. He doesn't become a six-figure attorney. No, he becomes a public defender. He doesn't do anything easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the tragedy aspect that just keeps coming up over and over and over again in his story.
So, really, I would say heroes can have the same foundation, but and that's fine. You have tons of heroes out there who have the same foundation. Again, Batman and Daredevil, they come from the same place, a place of tragedy in childhood that has carried with them into adulthood and fueled their drive to stop evildoers and things like that. But it's what makes that character unique. As I believe, Professor, you said, why is it that you can't just put Batman's cowl on Daredevil and vice versa? What makes them special?
Yeah.
What makes them a character?
Remember we tried to show my parents the Daredevil show, and they just kept saying over, he loses a lot. I don't know about this.
That's one of the best parts.
He gets beat up a lot. When's he going to beat somebody up and win? It's like,
that's one of the best parts of the show is, he gets
look,
beat,
it's not
keeps coming
easy.
back.
You can't just jump in the Batmobile, man.
Yeah, and that makes it all the more effective. Like, what was it, episode 2 or whatever, the first season, when he saves that little boy? I mean, that's what just wrenches at your heart, is he's like barely able to stand, but is still carrying that little boy out. That's huge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think it was Aristotle and like the metaphysics that said, that humans as a race are as blind to the truth as a bat is to the light of day. And I don't know. It's kind of interesting that, Batman chooses to operate always at night, right? He chooses to be in the night and to operate in that way and to deal with the criminals and everything. But Daredevil has no choice. He's always in the dark, but yet he sees more than, anyone.
Yeah.
So, before we all run out of steam here, I mean, I think as far as the first writing stream, this has gone great.
Oh, yeah.
But we still need to do the one thing as writers that none of us have really tackled yet, and that is, how would you approach writing an original superhero that captures the tropes of a classic, but remains fresh?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to do research first.
I'm an editor. I just tell you what sucks.
That's a wonderful answer, though. That is a wonderful answer. I mean, when I tried to do a Bombshell, the very first thing I did was I had a number of conversations with a certain professor in the room about archetypes and heroes. I asked him, okay, I really want to understand. Give me a reading list.
Mm-hmm.
And I just spent a number of months doing nothing but reading the best superhero tales there were to read. I mean, watching the Timverse cartoons was not enough. I already owned all of those. Growing up on X-Men certainly wasn't a great example. I don't really even consider them superheroes. I think that's more of a fight for survival when Claremont was writing it. So I really wanted to delve into the classic hero mythology, and that is the first thing I did, was research it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'd have to do. I know that I would, because I would want to know. I don't know. I feel like you know, if you don't want to make the same mistakes that people before you have, then obviously, you need to research and find out from the masters what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, that kind of thing. What is American, mythology? What is that? Once you've kind of defined that, then you can, I mean, I was actually just thinking when you guys said that, I was like, is that where Batman came from? The kind of noir sort of, Americana.
Yeah. The pulp fiction stuff.
And so
a huge influence on Batman was the Shadow, and to the point where there might be some plagiarism on that.
Well, actually, once you look at
The
the
Shadow,
you realize it was plagiarized.
To hell, but he has evolved into his own.
Kane was a plagiarist.
Yeah.
Well, they're all plagiarists.
And if we had gone down a different timeline, it would have been the Bat.
Oh, wow.
Who is the icon and not Batman?
Wasn't Spider-Man like the Fly or something?
What's that?
As it wasn't Spider-Man like the Fly originally?
I have no idea.
Answering that question from just my own unique writing process, research is definitely huge for me. Though, like, I couldn't start out saying I want to write a trickster story. I'd have to start out with a piece of inspiration first, just my own writing process. Like some idea, some little part of the character has to occur to me and kind of hook me and kind of, fascinate me about that. And then, then I'll develop whatever archetype, goes along with that or whatever. I have to kind of come at it from an inspiration angle, I guess. So a slightly different place, but that's just, different writers have their own processes.
I mean, when I write, I'll spend days writing an intro to to like a chapter, and that's because to me that's the foundation, and I want, as soon as you read that, to be like, yes, I'm invested in this chapter. You know what I mean? And for the character, I think it'd have to be the same thing, like the intro, the impetus, the hook, the like what made them a hero, what they want. Like, I need to know that. Like, what is it? Why does this person want to be a hero? What actually makes them a hero?
Yeah, they got their
good.
They have both their empowerment, but they also need their call to adventure. Yeah, what makes them do what they do? Yeah,
exactly. And I think that it's sort of like taking a transistor and building a radio around it. You know what I mean? You got to start with that foundation and then build the story around it and figure out what you want to do from there. Because you can, all these other things are basically guidelines. They're like, bumper, what are the bumper balloons in a bowling lane? They're going to keep you out of the gutter. But it's, it's up to you to make the point.
For all the writers in the room, is it important for you that your hero is going into this wanting to be a hero, or simply they see something that needs to be done and nobody else is doing it?
I would definitely write from the perspective of it has to be done.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I guess that would depend on the character. I mean, somebody like Midoriya, I would say both. He wants to be a hero because he knows that it must be done. you know.
Well, what I mean is that one of their reasons why they are doing this, or does the thought not even occur to them?
Oh yeah, it has to be the driving factor has to be we're doing this for the because it's the right thing to do or whatever. Yeah, I mean, if they're just doing it just for the fame or whatever, then it becomes The Boys, and then Amazon makes a series about it. How horrible they are.
Then it becomes another deconstruction that everybody thinks is new.
Yeah, this is so fresh and original. He's actually really good.
It's not The Watchmen or, what is it, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or Preacher or any of the other books that these guys have read. It's like if I just cheat notes. If Enos wrote it, he hates Christianity and superheroes. There you go.
No, I just know that you never trust anybody who says it's never been done before. It's like, no, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few really, truly, completely original stories. It's just in how you tell the story. It's the actual storytelling and the craftsmanship that make it something that seems new or just seems, innovative, that captures the naked mind.
Mm-hmm.
Was it was one of the best "It's never been done before" pitches I had ever heard was from blank, because I don't want to say his name. Just, well, she's like a cop by day, but Nathan Drake by night, and she's half Maori and half French, and has a background as a wizard. Well, yeah, you're right. It's never, and she's a lesbian. Oh, yeah, that's never been done before.
Okay, how not to write a hero of any kind. If you begin with an identitarian piece of nonsense, I'm out.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean,
if you use "and then" more than once, you're done.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
When I was developing Bombshell, really the thing that kept coming to mind was I had approached it originally was creating a character that captured all the things that we liked about, Power Girl and Miss Marvel when Brian, oh God, what's his name? I forget his name now.
Not Vaughn, is it?
No.
The Frank Cho years.
Yeah. What was it about those? When Frank Cho and I forget Brian, what's his face, were writing it or doing that book. What I wanted a character that captured all the things that those two books had back in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really the character did not take shape until it was the question, well, what's the villain?
Mm-hmm.
What is she up against? What is the cultural forces at work that require a hero?
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was from that caused it all to fall into place. So in that sense,
well, I think also in that respect, the world, the city, wherever it is that your hero is defending should also be a character unto itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what obviously like Daredevil and Batman and a lot of them do. They kind of like tied the city to the character, and then I mean, I remember when I saw the first images of Bombshell, and I was like, she looks like she's part of the city.
Exactly.
Like it looked like her arm and her gear and even like her hair and everything. I was like, she looks like she came from that city. And I think, and that's important, obviously, right? I mean, that's it's one of those thematic details. Like, she was part of this, and she's still part of this, and that's a big deal.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do, if I ever get the project off the ground, was that I wanted a color scheme to be going through the entire story that no one wore white except her. So
nice.
that you have these backgrounds so that whenever she popped up, she would just stand out like a sore thumb on these black city silhouettes and people in kind of a militaristic garb, kind of the fascist state look. And the idea is this is the only character that wears white and her hair is white. Also, the idea being that even though she's a hero, I wanted an asymmetrical presentation with elements being the armor she's wearing clashing against the heroic nature. I mean, the elbow spikes, the fact that she's wearing armor at all, showing that there was baggage and still a burden to be carried when creating it. So we'll see. Hopefully it'll happen next year.
Yeah, definitely.
Your fingers crossed. Somebody mentioned a book called Dreadnought and Identity Politics in Heroes. Does anyone know anything about this?
Doesn't ring a bell.
I don't.
Me neither. Sorry.
Sorry, dude.
All right. Well, unless anybody's got more to bring to it, Kat.
I'm having fun.
Go ahead.
Fist of the North Star. I thought my idea of combining Mad Max westerns with Mad Max and Dragon Ball Z was original.
Owen's mentioning how I answered his question on Night Editor. So.
Oh, cool.
Dreadnought's a trans hero.
I was about to transfer. It's bad.
You can hear that when you hear people describe their characters. I talk about this a lot too. Like even the press releases for different heroes or different stories, like that was the problem when they introduced the Batwoman series on the CW.
Yes,
Batwoman will be about a lesbian woman. Yeah, it's like that. That's what defines this show. It's about a lesbian. And it's like that can't be the defining trait who she wants to sleep with.
I am sick of just characters in general being described as, well, they're a lesbian, they're gay, they're trans, they're black,
they're Muslim,
Hispanic, they're whatever. It's like, look, that tells me nothing about who they are. Mm-hmm. It's up there with God. What was that movie at Comic-Con several years ago where we asked them to describe the film.
Oh, that was Doomsday.
Yeah, it was Doomsday. And
they could not describe the movie. It just kept coming back to, it has Malcolm McDowell.
Like, well, that's great and all, but what's it about? It's like, well, it's got Malcolm McDowell. It's got
lots of special effects and stunts.
Can you imagine if like Daredevil was described as, that white Catholic dude?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, that sounds like a great title for a story or white Catholic dude.
What is it? The old D23 thing, with Disney, they had like, it was a Kamala Khan series, Ms. Marvel, and they're like, it's like the Muslim superhero, and I'm like, really? That's your pitch?
Yep, the Muslim superhero.
People that have never seen this before. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
No, just
a cat has opinions on Kamala. Anyway, yeah, you've both heard the show. Okay, yeah.
It's like she's going to PTSD,
I will say this, and you'll hear it in our next talking shop. She is a character that can be saved. Marvel just won't do it.
There's actually nothing wrong with the character. It's bad writers.
Yeah. It's terrible writers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's not even good beyond bad. It's terrible.
True.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obvious. I don't know. It's
not like Riri is just garbage to start,
Yeah, she's a horrible character. But I mean, isn't that the thing? I mean, like, even the artists and the writers, they're not giving them time, or they just, they want this to be topical or whatever. But you end up creating these just horrible characters that there's nothing to them. But like you said, she can be saved. I mean, she does have nuance available. They just don't use it.
Yeah. No, they don't. They're too busy with their heads up their asses with their agendas to see that they actually do have a good character there with lots of potential. Instead, they've got her fighting marshmallow monsters sent by space smurfs.
Who then that was just a test. You're actually the chosen one, and you're the best ever.
Yep.
Isn't that pretty much how they all are?
She's the bestest ever.
Okay, Jake Quinlan has a question for you.
Professor Geek Cat, I demand you do weekly shows reviewing every episode of Ms. Marvel. You know you wanna.
No. Somebody was telling me that, like, yeah, because we were discussing her powers, and they said that her powers were like not just that she moves the mass, back and forth, or she can increase or diminish her mass at will. But the way that she does that is increase or diminish her mass at another point in all of her life omnisciently.
What?
And quantumly entangled. And that's in the comic.
Get that idea out.
Wow.
That would be G. Willow Wilson and Somanat.
Wow.
That's retarded.
So she stretches through time and space, basically.
Doesn't that kind of overcomplicate what doesn't need to be complicated?
Well, not only that, it makes her, I mean, if you actually understand half the science there, she's literally unbeatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And therefore ultimately boring.
Yep. Like she has no weakness. I mean, if she takes any injury, she can remove the mask, put it back, and then she's completely healed.
I just hate the the picture that people try to paint with her. She's amazing. She's a young, small girl, but she can claim her space and she can take up space. And she's not just the extent of her appearance. And she could transform her body, but it doesn't change who she is. And they just, oh God.
Yeah, young girls transform their bodies all the time. It's called eating too many donuts.
I want to know why she's chosen, of all the looks, to try and look like Grimace from the McDonald's commercials.
No.
And Biggin.
I'm sorry. I hear her say "embiggen," and I just think of Jebediah Springfield. You guys know what I mean?
I have no idea.
No.
On The Simpsons, the engraving on that statue of Jebediah Springfield is it like the will to something embiggens the smallest man, and it's supposed to inspire you, but he uses embiggen wrong.
No.
So,
You know what I think of? I think of like I'm sorry, I'm just a guy. You know, so what is it? The old Family show. You know, with the guy, the father that was like a shoe salesman, and he always had the porn magazine called Biggins.
Oh yeah,
Married with Children.
Married with Children. There you go. I'm sorry.
That's that show.
You know, she says "embiggen," and I'm like, what is she looking for a magazine?
What is required? What are the requisite points that someone needs to actually hit to create a superhero character? I mean, an actual superhero. What bases need to be covered? What's required, really?
Like a comic book superhero.
Yeah. I mean, what are the bases that need to be covered, really?
I think they need a empowerment, and the empowerment doesn't have to be superpowers. I mean, Batman's empowerment is his years of study and training. So they need an empowerment and they need a call to adventure, and those two things can come separately or together, but they need both of those. And then for the comic book superhero nature, they need to be visually interesting. So they have to have a cool costume, or if they are more of a goth, noir kind of character, they have to be able to move in the shadow. They have to have something about their shape. They need to be visually appealing. I never understood this this drive some people have to like, my character did. No, it's just like, hey, can you read this comic? It's called such and such. I'm like, there's all this I'm flipping through. This is just people talking and doing things. I want to see if this is a visual medium. I want to see some spectacle, So, I need the costumes, need the colors, something visually appealing too. I'm sure there's more to it. Those just things
I
come
would
to
have
mind.
to say that the costume design is the first thing that a reader sees, and that costume should telegraph who the character is or what they stand for.
Yeah.
And that's something that's often, I mean, really, what does Kamala Khan's outfit communicate to you as a reader?
That she broke into a thrift store.
spandex.
Go-go dancer.
Yeah.
She actually makes that costume out of what's it called? Like the full body bathing suit that Muslim women will wear. I forget the
Really?
Oh,
the
Is
burkini. Yeah.
burkini?
Yeah. So that she actually alters her burkini into that suit.
Oh my God.
I was gonna say, does she make it out of Nazi tears?
So then I guess as a reader, we're supposed to communicate. What does that communicate? She's modest.
That she's Muslim. Hello, it's very important.
Yet she spends large segments of the comic trying to make it very clear to the reader that she's not that Muslim.
Getting drunk.
And infidel meat is tasty.
And banging her boyfriend in the back of a car.
Right? I keep mentioning, I'm like, isn't she like a slut? And everybody's like, no. And I'm like, yeah.
Reading the book, it was hard for me to tell if she was supposed to be 16 or 21. I mean, she does.
That's a problem with a lot of these things, but these are the same people that think it's okay to invite a 9-year-old to a gay club and give them money.
Well, that derailed everything.
Sorry.
Yeah, when are we going to get our first map superhero?
Oh gosh, no.
You think that's on the way from Marvel?
Probably.
I mean, the thing is like you can have trans superheroes or whatever. I mean, who cares, right? I mean, a superhero is a superhero. If it's a cool character, I'm going to look at it. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. You know what I mean? But if your entire idea is that, like I said, this identitarian nonsense that, they're trans and they do trans things. Okay. What does that mean?
What are trans things? Chopping your pecker off? I mean, what is it that is a
I always thought trans things were, like Autobots roll out. I mean, I was cool with that.
Well, it's like the Iceman by Sina Grace. This is all about his this is Iceman coming out as gay, and all that is every page is like, guys, I'm gay. I'm going on a date with a guy, because I'm gay. It's just like every damn. It's like, can you
being an insufferable sack of shit? Is
yeah. That's basically the character.
Being a sex crazed, it
reminds me of
but preferred the poon, not the dick.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to hear anybody, wax poetic about their graphically sexual activity, all the time. Or
did we really need a giant ice penis?
Tim Lim thought so.
Maybe that's what he's missing in his life.
I don't know if you see that latest comic. It's amazing, but there's a big ice penis in me.
I'm totally. What are you talking about? I totally missed this. What's going on?
In his latest comic, in Tim Lim's, Tim Lim and Mark Pellegrini's, not the late. Well, yeah, the latest one.
Walmart or the Black Ops? Oh, Walmart. Okay.
Walmart. Yeah,
I haven't read the new one yet. It's like I've got it, but yeah, okay.
Okay, then I mean, I don't want to spoil it. Yeah,
Gotcha.
there's an ice penis.
In one of the Iceman issues, he actually creates a giant ice penis.
Wow.
To trap an enemy with.
What would be the point of that?
What's that?
What would be the point of that?
He's gay.
Because he's gay, and that's
I guess that's gay stuff, right?
Apparently, that's all the gay people think about.
Was he inside the ice penis? It was like a hollow dildo, and he wanted to spew it? I mean,
yeah. If you ever watched the David Sedaris, the ambiguously gay duo, which I kind of hate for its ripping on Batman and Robin, but like that stuff's supposed to be a joke, and the SJW writers now are actually just putting that as serious, business in the comics. It's just like, oh man, really?
Yeah, I remember when the ambiguously gay duo was a joke. That makes me sad. I remember when It's Pat was a joke.
Oh yeah.
Now it's just kind of like walking down the street. We live in California.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have to watch your feet? Watch where you walk?
Luckily, we are not in Los Angeles.
We live in San Diego, so no, there's no syringes and turds on the street here.
No, we just have to drive north about an hour and a half, and then that is our reality.
Yeah, fortunately, there are too many military bases here for this city to be blue.
Yeah.
And that means there's no syringes or turds on the streets. So.
You're like, we're protected. It's like being holy ground,
This is completely nothing to do with writing, but it has been kind of a very depressing journey of watching the state slowly
descend into madness
and
tetanus.
It starts making the New York of Escape from New York look like a nice place.
Where's Lex Luthor with the 500 megaton bomb when you need one?
Yeah, you had the right idea. Okay, well, I don't know. I don't really have anything more to add to this. I think we covered our bases here. I mean, unless anyone's got more to. Oh, what? You ask it.
Okay. Well, I've got one last thing to bring up. It's a topic of superheroes we have not covered yet. And that is, what makes up a good superhero team?
Well, you got to have a variety of archetypes, and you have to have complementary. By complementary, I mean like able to kind of conflict and produce some friction, but also fill in the gaps. So each hero should be needed for a specific task. I mean, really, a good hero team is defined by their challenge.
I was just about to say that you have to have a need for them.
Yeah.
So, what would be the need for the Justice League?
Well, that's one problem that a lot of Justice League writers run into. I don't know if I was reading the Rebirth that Brian Hitch was writing, And a lot of people fall into the trap of like, okay, they're the Justice League. They're these incredibly powerful heroes. So we need to have world-shattering, fabric of reality, universe-bending, threats every issue. And it's like, that's just not fun to hear over and over and over and over and over, so there are other things that you can, but it just has to be something that needs all of their unique talents. So something like a World Patrol, I mean, you can tell all kinds of stories. It's not just one specific threat, but just the need arises for them. Your thoughts on that, Dr. Wright? I don't want to take it all.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, all the books that I've read that, the Justice League or whatever, it's usually like an outside threat that comes in. It's the same kind of thing that was in the Avengers, where like aliens come or something and they're like, oh, we can't handle this on our own. Is usually what it is. One of them, can't handle it on their own for whatever reason. And so they're like, okay, we need to make a group. And then, inevitably it becomes the whole like Watchmen thing, which is, who watches the Watchmen, right? Because at that point they're like, okay, now that we have this power, what do we do with it? And, they come to the conclusion that, oh, we have to watch over all people and protect everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And that becomes why they need a team, because the world's too big for any one of them. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, but any one of these things could be handled by one of you singularly or another hero in this huge world. So why do they effectively need a group that is, again, like, then it comes to the point, it's like, okay, you're splitting everybody up, right? Well, if you're splitting everybody up, why do you need them all together? Like, what is it that causes that? Yeah. I think that some of that is like, what makes a good team is there does need to be some like conflict. There needs to be agreement and conflict, and that, like you have, like we were talking about Batman and Green Arrow, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we agree on the same thing, but not the why.
Yeah.
I never bought Batman as a team player. I just,
he never is when he's written well.
He should be reluctant about it if he's not in control. Yeah. One thing too is, what are you writing? Are you writing just a film, or a single event story, a single comic, video game, or whatever? Then yeah, the big huge threat from what alien threat or whatever too. But if you're writing a series, then a series needs moments to. You need continuity, but for people to follow longer arcs, but you also need moments to breathe. That's one of the things I dearly loved about Peter Tomasi's Superman run under Rebirth, was that you had these longer story arcs, you had these longer, things that were going on. They were fun, they were well paced, but then you also had single issue stories occasionally, which just allowed the characters just to be the characters. I mean, we had a whole story of just Superman and his family at the carnival. And it was great. And, threats happen, things happen they needed to go do, but you pace your stories. I'm sure Kat can say a lot about that, pacing a series, as opposed to just a one-shot story.
No, that's very necessary, because each one needs to have, each episode or chapter needs to have a high and a low if it's going to be episodic, to carry your audience through to the next week or the next issue, which is totally different than reading a book where you go through chapters.
I did like the way that in the Timverse they had used Justice League Unlimited more as a dispatch rather than a fighting force. It was got a problem here, who do we send?
Yeah. And
I also like that they brought in the question of, not the question of who watches the Watchmen, which of course, yes, but also where's the line between, being a police state and still letting everybody fall on their faces and having, to solve their own problems, but the big things that normal people can't solve, they do for them. Where is that line? Which I did think was a great question, not a deconstruction, but a question for heroes.
Yeah. And there's also, we talked about, go ahead.
Oh, I just have, there's somebody in the chat that's asking a question. He's been asking it a couple of times too.
Okay, what's the question?
He says, Professor Geek, how would one establish what's survivable in their universe? Like, how far can you push physics before it's no longer plausible the target is alive?
Well, I mean, I suppose the easiest gauge I would give, and I realize this is a question for the professor, but easy.
No, I think they just tagged me, so we'll see it. So yeah, no, this is
my answer would be, well, does it come across as stupid? If your reader sees it and says, no, that's kind of dumb.
Wow.
I would add too that
I mean, how many times have we seen superhero movies? It's like, oh, come on, Superman reconstructed the Great Wall of China with his eye beams. No, that's just stupid. I mean,
I would add consistency too. Even if you're going to have some sort of outlandish rules, be consistent with it. Don't pick and choose as to what serves the plot at the moment.
I mean, I think, what usually causes something to go awry in that case is like Deus Ex Machina, is when you're trying to solve the story or solve a problem that you have with something outside of it. Because then you end up having to create like a MacGuffin or a power source or something else. Like, we were ragging on Star Wars, you know what I mean? It's like, I can't figure out why the ships are chasing. Oh, there's fuel all of a sudden. And this one can see that one, even though it couldn't before. It can track it now. And you end up having to do that to fix like your writing error. Whereas, if you kind of just write within the story and keep it limited, I mean, that's something that like a lot of like beginning writers, the mistake they make is make the character too powerful.
Yeah.
So they can solve anything. And then you're like, well, why don't you just solve this?
Well, I like the logic I gave for why Bombshell wears armor. It's like, just because you're bulletproof doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Or you can survive getting stabbed by a needle. It doesn't mean it isn't going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's I don't know, there's a certain I guess intuitive sense, based on the logic of however your world's constructed, magic, power, whatever it is.
I would say another one is that if you need to write your plot or whatever you've gotten your character into, you have to resort to things like it was just a dream or time travel.
Yeah.
You're screwed.
Done.
Yeah.
I always think too, there should be
not good.
There should. I feel like there should always be like a some sort of, if not a sacrifice, at least a compromise. If you're having some great power or they've suffered some great damage, there needs to be something that happens from that.
Yeah.
And if there's not, then that's when people begin. It's like a budget. I mean, your will to disbelieve is like a budget. If the story's good, you'll let it go for a little bit longer. If the character's cool, you'll let it go for a little bit longer. But if the costume sucks, the character sucks, the story's bland, and then they do a stupid power, you're like, all right, I'm out.
I can't remember who suggested it, but it's something I've often followed, especially when it came to writing Case File Arkham, which is put your character through ever-living hell.
Well, it was like Vladimir Nabokov is or Nabokov for the snobs. His quote is the work of the writer is to put their main character up a tree and then throw rocks at him.
Yeah. Neon Star Productions asks, does someone who can regenerate need body armor? Well, I would say the easiest answer to that is, again, you can heal from a cut, but would you wanna?
Yeah.
Well, it's like that's like Wolverine. He can heal from anything. You know what I mean? But he still feels everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the coolest parts about him, right? Is that he's still, it's like, yeah, I still feel that, getting stabbed or getting ripped open or whatever it is.
All right. Well, again, we've been going for about 81 minutes here. I'm cool with unless anyone's got some questions for us. I would say this has been a pretty effective first show.
Yeah, definitely.
How would you tell a good superhero time traveling story?
Well, I would say that you would start out with time travel being established from the beginning so that your reader knows it's there.
Otherwise, it goes into the realm of do not attempt.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, sometimes things seem like a good idea, but they're really not.
And if you are going to do time travel, you need rock solid rules that are set up from the beginning that you never break. Those rules have to be established from the onset in the first act, made very clear to the audience, and then you've got to follow those rules to the letter. Otherwise, they will not trust you ever again.
Yeah, like time turners. Doesn't work. Don't do that.
Time tremors.
Time turners, the thing in Harry Potter, the necklace or whatever it was in the Harry Potter thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, why didn't you just go back and kill him? Because we can't. We don't help him now.
Because because then we wouldn't have a story.
Yep.
Owen Lister says that Guyver is a good example of handling a good OP original character. Geez, I wish you were on, Owen. I would love to hear why. No, seriously, I'm not being sarcastic.
I get it, but it's
No, sorry. Look, this is part of the problem of being a shut-in. Is after a while you lose the ability to understand vocal tone, and sometimes I can say stuff that just sounds thoroughly terrible, and it doesn't mean to. So if it sounded that way, Back to the Future, yeah. Let's see. Superman beat the crap out of Darkseid, Goku style.
Okay.
Don't pull an Endgame. I agree. I mean, I suppose if Endgame was the last story you ever told and you didn't make any more movies, you could get away with the time travel, but
now they all have to worry about that stupid 5-year gap rule.
Okay, well, while we're all talking about this, each of you pick one thing never to do with a superhero.
Okay.
yeah, that's a huge list, but I have a sneaking suspicion that the professor is probably the expert on this one.
I mean, I don't think it. Well, I'm trying to think. Because I mean, anything I think of first of all is just something you shouldn't do with any character. Period. But for superheroes,
that's perfectly fine. Just
Yeah.
what is something you should never do with your superhero story, your character?
It should never be easy, ever. If you're going to carry the burden of a hero, it should truly be a burden that takes sacrifice and loss and hardship and pain. Because if you're going to affect change around you on that level, it's going to come back at you, and it's going to hurt you no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I would say resist the urge to deconstruct.
Yeah, don't do that. That's the top one. You're right. No. See, I told you Professor was the expert. That's the number one rule. Do not do a deconstruction.
I would say, don't make your character canonically gay after they've been straight for the past 50 years.
That's also a good one.
How about you?
Oh, me?
I know you have an entire show based on this.
I do have an entire show.
Is it there are too many choices, or?
Yeah, there are too many choices, and all of you have already picked a lot of my top ones. So just trying to pick something. I suppose if going against character. If you're writing a well-established character already, don't have them do something that goes against their nature. If it's your own character, don't have them do something out of character, which unfortunately happens a lot with superheroes.
You shouldn't have to say that.
I know I shouldn't have to, but I have to.
No, it would be really edgy if Superman just broke his spine, dude. Because
Like, why?
Yeah. Or if he went to hell and came back. He's done that a couple of times. I don't even think it bothers him anymore. He goes to hell. He's like, dude, where's the elevator?
At least with DBZ, at least with Dragon Ball Z, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been to hell. It's not that bad. Except for the two guys who wanted to wrestle me.
Xevious says, how would you tell a story about
parody of that stuff anyway?
Xevious asks, how would you tell a story about a multi-generational family of fairies who exist in a quantum state?
You're going to have to show us how.
Yeah, he's talking about my book, Sins of the Fae.
Oh.
Well, that's what I mean. I realize that's what you're going to have to show us how. How are you going to do it?
Very carefully. That's
a good answer.
You have a deconstruct. If you have to deconstruct a hero, at least have the courtesy to build them back up afterwards.
Not in your own image.
Yeah, not in the Tom King image.
No.
Or,
better, stronger with a steel frame and a sprinkler system.
Don't turn him into a fat drunk. Yeah, I agree with that. Also, don't turn him into a metrosexual in dumb glasses.
I wouldn't even call that deconstruction, though. It's like a good example of this is one of my favorite Superman stories is Superman for All Seasons, and Superman's real trial in that is that Luthor at one point makes him think that maybe Metropolis would be better off without him. Maybe he's just meddling to maybe, this, the inspiration that he pulls this whole like sham and this make Superman think this thing that didn't really happened. But Superman so Superman kind of goes back home for a season with his the Kents and has to realize, oh no, the world does really need me. But at no point during that does he question whether or not it's good to do the right thing? Does he question whether or not he is a good person? Does he question whether or not? No, he's just questioning whether or not, because of this delusion, because of this trick that Luthor's played on him. Uh-oh, seeing the circle of death on my stream here. I hope we're still coming through okay.
Oh, you have to reload.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, all right. So anyway, yeah, you can have a character. They can self-doubt a little bit, and they can question things like Kat was saying, but I think that's not crossing the line over in the deconstruction, which I don't think is a line you can come back from.
I would say the thing that really was interesting about a Superman for All Seasons was that he's never really the main character. They're always being narrated through other people's eyes. Each chapter we're having other people tell us what they see when they see Superman.
Yeah, never his perspective, yeah.
So that's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I think deconstructionism and that kind of thing, like the way that you don't go there is you don't remove the absolute values, because that's what it is all about. I mean, it's part of that postmodernism. It's part of that. Let's remove morality. Let's remove heroism. It's all generic gray quagmire instead of like the extremities that a normal human can never achieve.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I think later on I'm going to have to go through here in the chat, unless he wants to collect them for us. Is the people in the chat are putting down lists of SJW tropes to avoid.
Oh yeah, good ones.
Really, I think this list should just be compiled and posted for everyone to see. This is great.
That's a good idea.
Neon Star Productions put another SJW trope. There is no such thing as a burden when nothing is your fault and everyone loves you no matter what.
Yep.
Because you loves the science.
Yes. Because they love the science.
And they don't know anything about the science, which is always great.
No, I do not.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to suggest we wrap it up at 80 minutes or 80 minutes here.
Sounds good.
I think we should discuss what we could do for next topic off air sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And let's all give shout outs to what we want to promote.
Sounds good. Dr. Wright, you talked about your book coming up?
Sure. I have a couple of books coming up. I have Sway, and then I have Sins of the Fae. Sins of the Fae is a story about multi-generational fairies that are existing with a quantumly entangled state. They highborn themselves exist this way, and they keep trying to fix the world, and instead of fixing it, they keep screwing it up. They keep making it worse. And this has affected the family of one of the highborn, and and it goes into a kind of state of domestic bliss, tears it up. But the story itself is about family. It is about a family torn apart and a family that comes back together in the worst of tragedies.
Nice. And when can we expect that?
It depends. If I have enough promotional material probably to come out with it in September, but I'm a little timid to come out with anything this late in the year, because it feels like a lot of the the influence of Indiegogo and crowdfunding is kind of waning down. And so I may wait until the beginning of the year, but I'm gonna see. I mean, it could come out in the next couple of months, though.
Where can people follow you to keep updated with it?
You can see me at Dr. Wright is in. I'll put notices there. I also have the Insider channel here on YouTube, and you can follow me on that. We're always talking about it over there. We also have insider.net, which is our website and digital newsletter, where we share a lot of information about different escapism, and we want to bring everybody inside, and want to incite your fire and your passion to encourage others in art and entertainment.
Cool. I'll go next, I guess. So Tales from the Stacks, I did drop a link in the chat a little while ago. I'll drop another one, but do back my book. It's going to be the source of me closing here in a matter of weeks, so want to back that if you haven't yet. And lots of great artists, lots of good stuff going on from that. And then I'm going to be doing a gaming stream, my first gaming stream, a little later. I was going to do it right at 1:30. It might be more like 1:45 or something at this point, but I'm going to throw out the Mixer link on Twitter, and then I'll put the video up on YouTube later. So I'm going to start into the Knights of the Old Republic journey.
Excellent.
Very cool. Well, I have 2 shows to pimp. First one is Adventures in Awful, where I read Cold for the first time in awful comic book that is currently being published, and give my reviews and critiques on what can be done better with it. And on top of that, there's my new show, Night Editor, where I take questions from all of you guys. So please send me your questions about, about the writing craft. I would love to answer them on my show. And very soon, probably this weekend, my website will be up and live and running, and that will be nighteditor.com. That's night, KNIGHT, editor.com.
And finally, if you miss the days when when horror noir had men who were men, women who were gorgeous, and hell beasts from the abyss that didn't come with a trigger warning, you're going to love Case File Arkham, 1940s occult noir set in a Lovecraftian universe. Go to Amazon.com and read volumes 1 and 2. And while you're at it, check out my series, World War Kaiju.
Very cool.
All right. I think that's a wrap.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us, guys. And we'll check our Twitters and whatever. We'll let you know when the next episode is going to be up.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.